Good afternoon, gentlemen. It is your boy, Sir Yeetus. Welcome to episode 165 of Yeetus' Thoughts. This topic I've been thinking about for majority of the day yesterday, actually, when it comes to order versus chaos. And I'm not here to speak about the basis of it because we already got the gist of primarily men strive for order and primarily women they strive for chaos, right? There's obvious evidence in everyday life, right? Go look at the social dynamic of things when it comes to society itself or the dating market. It pretty much says for itself. But it's interesting how far back things go when it comes to how society views that type of situation because this isn't nothing new. This isn't a new idea. I say personally, based on what I've read, this idea has been around for thousands of years. They just didn't really have the same words or the same they can't convey the same thing, right? We're in a different society, different time, different age. So they have different ways of saying something than what we will say. There's a reason why I post the last couple of memes um last night. I'm sure you guys saw the meme of, these two ladies, they're summoning demons, like, haha, demons, so hilarious. And then the men are trying to fight for their lives, like, who keeps summoning these goddamn demons? Uh, yeah, it's funny on the surface, but there's also, I like the double layer of when women, they're just fucking running amok, just summoning evil motherfuckers to take over the world. And there goes us men fixing the issues once again. And on top of that situation, and we will be talking about that in a bit. I'm bringing that guy P and Grey Ghost. The question of why did the serpent? I didn't say Satan because based on the little research that I did, I realized that the serpent and Satan are two different beings, two different entities. Why did the serpent go after um Eve, not Adam? And we'll get to that in a bit. And before we begin, if you want to support your boy Sir Yeetus, there's two links on top of the chat, Cash App and PayPal. PayPal is only going to be open momentarily because people were telling me that they were struggling with Cash App. Until I set up something else, which will be this week, such as Subscribestar or Patreon or something else that's besides PayPal. We're going to keep it up for a short while. Any donation is appreciated, but if you don't want to donate, it's whatever, not a big deal. We're going to get this party started. All right. Welcome, Grey Ghost,
Good evening.
and welcome that guy Pete.
What's going on? Good to hear from you.
Yeah, it's been forever, man. When was the last time you? It's been a while, bro.
It has, yeah.
But I think it's an interesting conversation. I needed specific people on the panel to actually have uh, we can dive into this not so straightforward topic. I need some critical thinking people. you know. So when it comes to the order versus chaos thing, this has been happening for a while to the point where it's just pretty much a cycle, in my opinion. Like history repeats itself. Um, when I took just a quick research, I didn't really, get into the Genesis, of the Bible. It kind of implies the order versus chaos thing, where the Eve was seduced easily by the serpent, right? Like, hey, bro, fuck what God says. Hey, eat this apple, right? You're gonna have a big old booty if you eat this apple. Eat it right now, right? And he was like, oh, okay, And she does her thing, and it also it doesn't say that Adam was deceived, right? Um, so I assume that he chose to do it just to simp over Eve. I'm not too keen on the Bible verses and stuff, but based on what I know, Eve got deceived by the serpent, right? Because why not? And then Adam, he followed suit, not because Eve tricked Adam or the serpent tricked Adam. He willingly did it, possibly because he was, sipping about. And with both of them committing the sins, you know, now we're in a world full of corruption and all that other craziness that's happening in the world, right? And it sounds eerie similar to what's happening today, on a massive scale. Well, what do you think about that? We will start with that guy, Pete.
Well, I can't really comment too much about the religious aspect of things, but
Yeah,
I understand the purpose of the story,
right,
to not giving into temptation and things like that. But my view has kind of expanded a little bit. I mean, I've talked about this in the past, the concept of fast life strategy versus slow life strategy. Turd Flinging Monkey has talked about that as well. It's this basic idea that we seem to have two competing mating strategies in the world, and one of them is very chaotic, and one of them is more order based, right? So
right.
the fast life mating strategy would be minimal parental investment, just as much mating as you could possibly do. And there's obviously both men and women that participate in this mating strategy. And then there's the traditional mating strategy, the slow life that we have been accustomed to up until about 60 years ago, which is, heavy investment in the family, not fucking around a lot, just, taking responsibility, getting our crap together. Everybody played their roles and everything sort of, stayed on the straight and narrow. And then, the sexual liberation movement came through. That changed a lot of things. And now we just sort of have this free for all where people think they can have their cake and eat it too. And it's not really working out. So you could argue that the sexual revolution, if you will, could be a parallel to the forbidden fruit. And feminism could be argued to be the snake that sort of sold people on it. And, a lot of people gave into that temptation. And then they come back around after they have their fun and they say, hey, well, now I want the benefits of the old system I left behind. And it's like, well, that's not how it works. You made your choice. The door's shut behind you. So, I mean, that's probably a good starting point, at least from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, and I agree. And with the was it the tree of knowledge in the Bible? Was it the tree of knowledge?
Yeah, there was like one tree that was like forbidden to take fruit from.
Right, because at that point, well, first Eve was like, what was it? They became self-aware. They become like shameful. Like, why am I naked? And they did something they weren't supposed to do, to the point where they, how do I say? I can't really explain it properly, but I will definitely get to it later on in the stream.
Well, it's my understanding that prior to eating from the tree, the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge, it was that essentially that there was an innocence to humanity,
Right.
and basically upon plucking the apple from that tree, original sin was committed, and that's kind of from there what we're dealing with now, where we're all just kind of painted with this original sin that we atone for every day. At least that's kind of how I understand it.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is they didn't listen to God, right? That was the overall, like, what the fuck? I just told you not to eat that shit,
Yeah.
But uh Gray, based on what we talked about so far, what do you think about it?
Well, I actually went and tried to look up the original Bible bit, and there's only a couple lines dedicated to this, really.
Right.
So it's like so 3:6. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves.
So did they become, and like what that guy P said, it went from innocence to realizing what's right or wrong, like gaining a sense of morality or something like that?
Well, at the very least, they realized that they were naked.
Yeah.
Like
You know,
they didn't even think about that. Prior to this, they didn't even have the concept of nudity. They were just walking around in the garden, and they had no idea that being naked was even something that they shouldn't be to begin with.
and question isn't I don't think Cain is even Adam's father. I mean Adam's son.
No, wait, no, not Cain and Abel were Abraham's kids.
Abraham. Oh, look at see, I don't know that much about the Bible. My bad. Abraham's kids. But besides the Cain and Abel thing, when it comes to them,
Wait, no, sorry, no. Cain and Abel are the first two sons of Adam and Eve. So yeah, no, Abraham came later.
which one? So is both Cain and Abel his sons?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Um, it's something that I should have a bit more knowledge on, but you know that's just an overall premises what I'm trying to speak on. When it comes to something that happened thousands of years ago, of uh the serpent. I don't know if he tried to go after Adam or not. I don't know if he did, but I assume it did work, or he knew that Adam wasn't gonna bend the knee so easily. So he's like, "Oh, look, the woman. She should be more, gullible to what I have to say." And because of the woman doing it, Adam's like, "Well, I know God said don't do it, but you know,
That's the thing. It's very like there was no further discussion. According to the actual text, it's straight up the serpent went right to the woman, and it was just basically like Adam was there with Eve, and she handed it to him, and he ate it. Like
I know
there's
what
literally no more text. Anything beyond that is just
speculation.
speculation.
Which is something that hey, why did he only go to? I know there's a reason why he went to Eve, and he possibly did not go to Adam. No, there has to be a reason why. And my interpretation is Eve was more acceptable.
Partially, but here's the other thing. Like I would actually look at it as if you want to get both of them, then you go for the woman.
Yep.
Because Adam might have been like, all right, I'll eat this and see what it's like and then get back to you. Whereas with Eve, they ate it both at the same time.
Because Adam was simping, I know it was his wife or whatever, but he put and like what Lionel McTowell said, he put his wife over the word of God. That was a big no-no.
Like that's the thing. It's like if a woman damns herself, she'll take the man with her. But if the man damns himself, he'll go alone.
True. And we will take the punishment accordingly. At least most of us would. Because we know it's our fault, like, oh, my bad. Yeah, I fucked up. All right, I'll deal with the consequences. But there's always, with the woman, there's always a scapegoat. It's not my fault. Lack of accountability, or misery loves company situation where she will have someone go down with her, like you said. But overall, this definitely does correlate, in my opinion, to what's happening today. Even though they probably had different interpretation of it, I can see bits and parts of the Genesis situation, what's happening right now with, before the feminism thing came about, things were okay for the most part, right? People were deeply religious. People had, the structure, the authority, make sure everything was running smoothly and accordingly when it comes to society, right? No society is perfect, but it was good enough. People had a sense of what's right or wrong, good morals, do things for the betterment of each other, right? The elite is always going to be the elite, so that's besides the story. But the masses had pretty much a lot of shame, a lot of discipline and consequences, and just keeping everybody in line, keeping people in shape according to religious um, reasons. But as soon as feminism started kicking in out of nowhere, which was what, the late 19th century.
Well, yeah, I think let's maybe look at it from a slightly different thing, because elite's going to elite, but the elites have not always elited as they do today.
True.
So, but then we have to look, okay, what are the circumstances? Why do the elites do what they do? And I'd say, well, you look at the results. If you want a larger population, then you have the more religious sort of elite patterns, where it's all about societal unity, like people go to church, everyone's on board with the same topic. But those primarily come in times when massive land battles are a thing, and you need a large manufacturing population, meat grinder population, trades, etc. Nowadays, at the very least, it's the belief held by the elites that that's not relevant anymore. You don't need a huge sizable population. They're trying to reduce the population. So then you get these current results, ones that are essentially trying to annihilate the masses.
Yeah, but feminism was a huge flagship to what's going on today. Not the only, but it's a huge factor. And it came around the late 1900s, not the 1900s, the late 19th century, right? Where it was introduced, where it was founded or whatever. And it wasn't founded on good faith. It wasn't founded on equality. No, these were women that were just.
It's the thing. It's pushed by the communists to depopulate.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course.
But here's the thing. But feminism was not possible without the Industrial Revolution.
True. But as things start to get worse when it comes to the feminism ideology, right? Because it only starts in itty bitty pieces. Itty bitty pieces. They just little bit by little bit, just see, oh yeah, no, woman can go ahead and do this. A woman doesn't have to listen to what the husband says. The woman needs to have all control of the finances. She can go to work part-time and then eventually full-time. She can drop her kids off at a bunch of daycares whenever she feels like it. And then when you eventually hit the 1960s and onwards, oh, it was pedal to the fucking metal. Oh, it was bad. Once again, I know feminism wasn't the only factor, but it was a big factor of what's going on today. And that, in my opinion, I see bits of the Adam and Eve story on a massive scale right now when it comes to women. They wanted to do what a man does. They want to have more power. They want to have more knowledge. And then they obtain that. They become miserable. They kick the husband out of the household. They raise the very same men that they despised, right? And that's why this is a result of weaker, frail, and feminine men that we have today. And the symmetry is running amok, right? And now things are just out of control right now, right? Society on a massive scale is not doing well when it comes to order. It's a one-sided thing right now. And men are working. I'm talking about masculine men, right? Men with good morals and good ethics are working overtime to keep things afloat right now. What do you have to say about that, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely now in a postmodern type society, a post-feminist society, even in the sense that kind of like all the main battles that feminism sought out to win, they won, right? Like they got the no fault divorce. They got, I mean, up until they just reversed the Roe v. Wade thing, they had the baby, egg, and cheese for a long time at the federal level. There was quite a few things they have now. They can go into the workforce. They can get their own looks, money, and status. They can have all these things that men have now. But again, I think what women of modern times fail to understand is, yes, it's okay to want these things and have these things, but the cost is that you can't have the life that your grandmother and your mother had. And a lot of them definitely flip a shit when they hit their 30s and they're like, well, I'm ready to have the life that my mother and my grandmother had. Meanwhile, their mother and grandmother were like in their early 20s when they started that life. And they think they can have the same thing. And it's like, obviously, you know, eggs is an issue when you're starting to go into the 30s. Obviously, the further in you get, the more difficult it gets. But, you know, with fertility medicine and stuff like that, it's a little bit easier now than it's been back then. But you get the point. And you have kids who are getting raised by daycare and they think that's good enough, and it's not. So, I mean, it all roads kind of lead back to this genesis of feminism and kind of what they sought to do. And don't get me wrong, obviously there were, under the old system, because we acknowledge that no system is perfect, there were women that were in really bad situations, like abusive relationships and stuff like this under the old system. But inadvertently, by making these things like no fault divorce and stuff like this, yes, you did help the women that were in really, really bad situations. But what you also did was you opened the floodgates for people who just wanted to leave just because they felt like it. Like, duty doesn't matter anymore. So, yeah, it's a double-edged sword. It helped people that really needed help, but it also destroyed a lot of relationships that otherwise might have been intact due to social norms and things like this that would have allowed them to be disciplined. So, yeah, it's tricky.
That's the thing. I can't even give them that benefit of the doubt. Like, are there women in abusive relationships today?
Of course. There's people.
Do we have any idea whether it's more or less than it was 100 years ago?
We have no idea. But the point is, it does exist. And for those
people, but here's the thing. But like, who did it help? Because it hasn't stopped the problem. We can't even say conclusively that it even made the situation better. For all we know, there are more women in abusive relationships today than there were 100 years ago.
Sure. But I'm just outlining that there was an intention when those rules were made. There was an intention, but inadvertently, because they didn't add the necessary layers of nuance when factoring it in, it basically, by introducing something like no fault divorce, it allowed women who were not in abusive relationships just to be like, I don't love you anymore, I'm out, which I think is some bullshit. Because vows are
that's the thing, but I don't even give the benefit for the intention. Well, because who's the one who crafts the laws, who institutes the laws? Like, that's the excuse, that's the nice PR face, so that anytime someone gets like, oh, you're against feminism, that must mean you're for abusive relationships. You want to see women abused.
No.
Whereas, look at all these charities where like they come in, they do a bunch of shit, and they leave the people worse off than if they had done absolutely nothing at all.
True.
It's the same deal. They're still screwing with a whole bunch of people. The end result is that no one's actually helped. Everyone's worse off. It's just a whole bunch of elites get a shit ton of money.
True.
But it's like, oh, well, the intentions were good. No, they weren't. They weren't.
Well, here's the thing too, right? Again, you have to also factor in that, okay, when you're breaking up the intentions, because intentions can be multifaceted, right? There could be multiple reasons why you're doing something. Now, if you're looking, and I agree with you, it's a net negative. But if you're looking at it like, okay, let's say they have 10 intentions total, and one of the 10 intentions was what I'm saying. Okay, fair enough. That one intention might be good, but it doesn't negate the fact that the other 9 were really, really bad, as you're pointing out. So it's like, okay, we can't ignore the 1 out of 10, but at the same time, it's like we can acknowledge that the 9 out of 10 is a real problem, and women just leaving marriages because they don't love their husbands anymore, that's some bullshit. And I agree. Sure.
No, that's the thing. But I look at the intentions like who wrote the laws, feminism was not a ground up, like roots-based motion. It always had top-down support. It always had support from major groups. Do you thinking that the corporations and governments actually cared about the well-being of women in abusive relationships, and that's why, or even a part of why, they supported feminism, is saying all these current rainbow-colored institutions actually support the LGBTQ.
Oh yeah,
and they're not just virtue signaling.
If you want to go to the macro and talk about corporations and government, agreed. They don't give a shit. They just see dollar signs. But what I'm telling you is that maybe at the more micro individualistic level, there were people in those situations that did see it that way based on their own experiences. But again, yeah, you're right. In the macro sense, I still agree with you that it's a net negative. It's not good.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's just saying like people are gullible and they believe lies.
People are
Like that's all
gullible.
there is to it. But that's
People
the
are
thing.
gullible,
Like,
though.
But I would
talking
like-
tensions, I look at the people who actually had control and power, not the suckers that they lied to convince to go along with it.
True, but we also have to acknowledge that as individuals, if we did get suckered in, again, the people that suckered us aren't going to show up and say, "Oh, I'm sorry I suckered you." So at some point, we also have to make the concession that, like, for example, the whole manosphere is making this concession. Okay, we need to unplug. We need to rethink this whole thing and make our own personal lives better. Because there's nothing I could really do about the corporations or the government. But at least I can do something where, in my own little micro scale, I can take responsibility and make my life better. And granted, I think definitely there's a lot more women have to take responsibility for, given the fallout of feminism. But that doesn't mean that our hands are clean either.
No, but that's the same thing. But I'm not willing to give the whole like, oh well, the intentions were good. Now I'm beyond that excuse for anyone at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna say
that
something.
yeah. So
Wait,
that's
hold on,
that's
give me
the
a second,
root
give
of
me a
our
second.
difference.
Give
The
me
root
a
of our
second.
difference is that
It's
for
all good.
me,
It's all good. Hold on.
Yeah.
Everybody stop. Everybody stop. Anyway, so when it comes to today's society right now, my opinion, the state is pretty much a representation of the serpent of today's women, right? They're the ones that gave them all the, the leeway and all the propaganda and all the sweet nothings in their ears saying, "Oh, you don't have to do this. You don't have to deal with being a traditional wife. I can give you money right now. Just kick out your father. Go give your kids to the system. Go out and have a Sex in the City life and just do whatever you please." And it correlates to what happened in the Genesis, right? See, people, they got confused when it comes to, hey, why is only Adam taking the majority taking all the blame, even though that Eve was the one that sinned first, and Eve was the one that convinced Adam to eat that forbidden fruit? Well, that's technically what's happening today, right? No matter what women do in today's society, no matter how much chaos they ensue, which they are doing a lot of fucking chaos right now, and I still believe they're the driving force of what's going on with that fucking predatory shit that's happening in public schools and stuff, and the map situation. But that's a whole different conversation. They will always point the blame at the men, always, no matter what happens. The very same, like the meme I just showed last night, right? They're just running amok and just causing as much damage as possible, but then blaming good men like you for what they've done. And but you were the one that's supposed to stop them. You were the one, you let me do this, you let me do that. This is your fault. Right? But at the same time, if we even try to put our foot down, the woman and the government be like, you better back off. You want to go to jail? You want to have your life ruined? No? All right, just sit down and watch. So I say right now, I see a lot of symbolism from the Genesis that can definitely be applied today. And at this point, it's not ending well. It's not. I'm not saying it's not going to end well. It's already not ending well. And at this point, I think we're in a crash course to the point of no return. I see no possible way how we can reverse this situation. And I thought about this a lot, and I'm sure you guys thought about it as well. There is no way we could bounce back from this besides one thing: collapse. That's the only possible.
Well, it's kind of in the same, like, you can't bounce back without crashing first. It's like saying a ball can bounce without hitting anything.
Agreed.
Well, of course, they're going to be blaming us regardless, right? When things go up. But see, at this point, we need to, and this is why I believe our generation of men is vital. Like, we are pretty much the last line of a weakened defense Even our line won't last. And we all know this.
No, it won't.
That's why we create video. Well, I don't know about you guys, but that's why me and countless other content creators of the manosphere that actually gives a fuck about men, right? Not just about shills and shit. We are trying to give out as much advice as possible to any current man right now and the younger generation, right? It's getting to the point, and we talked about this before, that even the teenagers in high school are using our lingo. So we're getting some type of progress that we are actually telling the truth. Because if shit does happen, depending on how crazy it gets in the near future, if we have to rebuild, we can learn from our mistakes of what happened, right? But what do you mean? We were good girls. We were good women. All we have to do was pull up social media to show the atrocities that they've been doing. All the nonsense, all the chaotic decisions that they've made, right? All the I don't want kids, I don't want a husband, fuck men can go to war and die, blah blah blah. So when it is time to build, we definitely got to stomp out that feminism shit. We got to be the cure to that cancer. Whether it's our lifetime or a couple generations in the future, few generations in the future. We got to be the cure to that cancer, because it's going to be a global, not just Western. It's going to be a global collapse. Because we all very intertwined, at least in the economy sense. So, but like what RPM always says, once the lights go out, feminism will go out with it, and it's up to us to make sure it stays out. We know it's going to happen again in the future. Let's keep it real. But at least for the next who knows how long, we can be the gatekeepers, or give enough advice to the next generation of men so they can be the gatekeepers and keep shit in order, bring order back to society. What do you have to say about that?
Oh, actually, it brings up an interesting discussion. Anyone here familiar with Overlord?
Yes, I know about that. Yeah.
All right. So later on down in the series, slight spoilers for like the latest book, he decides to destroy the kingdom. Like,
right.
Straight up, absolutely annihilate it. And after he's done it, there's a couple of the handpicked survivors of the kingdom who look around and go, we cannot risk allowing this to happen again. Like, sure, we'll remember it because we were here. Our kids will remember it because, like, they'll be able to see it. But what about our grandkids? What about our great-grandkids? It's only going to take one generation to fuck up again to lead to the exact same tragedy and annihilation.
That's why I believe we need to be model a new example of how society should be, how men should conduct themselves and women should conduct themselves. And I'm not saying, I know it's easier said than done.
Well, but that's the concern that I have, is that with the generations, people are going to forget. Like, because guess what? We had a conduct. We had a way for everything to be. We had all these rules laid out, written down, multiple books, discussions on stories, and yet here we are.
That is true.
I think it also kind of take an element from Dune as well. Like, if you're familiar with Dune, in particular the God Emperor of Dune, he made it very clear that a huge part of his tyrannical oppression was to leave a scar on humanity's psyche so that they would never, ever accept tyranny in the future, and they'd be ingrained to constantly rebel against it.
Not even though it sounds, quote unquote terrible, that's not a bad idea.
Like that's the thing. Like it may be that because here's the thing: if it's just kind of a minor trauma, because keep in mind we had the fall of Rome, and the fall of Rome was not enough.
That is true.
We've had many civilizations fall, and none of those have created a permanent enough trauma to prevent the resurgence.
What's the longest? Because things were, how do I say? Because once again, no society is perfect, but things were under control or have a good amount of order for a long time until the 19th century and onward. I don't know how long, but a few hundred years, maybe I don't know how long, but
Yeah, like basically the Industrial Revolution was really the kickoff. Like that gave enough peacetime,
right.
enough peace and luxury that people got soft and forgot.
You know what? When you put it that way, you're correct. And just came about in the early 19th century. Or was it before that?
Early to mid 19th century. I'd have to double check exactly when the Industrial Revolution kicked off.
Okay. And yeah, line of MGTOW, yeah, the fall of Rome. See, people can't comprehend if depending on the severity of the collapse, we will go back in time. Like we will have a decent setback, depending on how crazy it gets.
And we got to keep in mind at the same time, there's always going to be populations that will want feminism to return.
That's why things need to get done, and I'm not going to specify on YouTube.
Things not only need to get done, but things will need to be remembered in a severe way. Like there can't be any like the past needs to be drug out into the light and put on permanent display. Like honestly, like let's say New York City collapses in fire, burns to the ground, and is just a husk and a ruin. I'd say never rebuild it, ever. Leave it.
I agree. I'm all for that when it comes to leaving something to, because the collapse itself, I know is going to be a traumatizing thing in itself, because once again, society, especially women, they cannot comprehend how much men do to keep society running. And if there's like a total collapse, they can't comprehend the craziness that's going to unfold.
That's the thing. I think part of why we don't remember the collapse of Rome is because we can go to Rome. We can see some of the remainders of the ruins, but they built on top of it. Basically Futurama style. They built new Rome on top of old Rome.
Right.
Like on all these collapsed societies, everything that burned to the ground, it was just fixed up.
Silas, thank you for the generous $2 donation. He says, will we need women with synthetic love bots uteruses? No, I don't think we will need that. But if
keep in mind that those aren't going to exist in a post-collapse society anyway.
Yeah. We will be set back for a long time, when that happens. But hypothetically, let's say if it does exist right now, bam, right now, I say you don't need it. But if a man wants it, I'm not going to hold it against him. But, because I know TFM, he's a big fan of those type of things. But I say at this point, at this day and age, I wouldn't even worry about bringing a child in right now. Because in my opinion, things are just too out of control, too chaotic. Evil's running amok. There's nobody strong enough that has a high enough authority that's able to stop what's happening right now.
Yeah, like you have to think like if you need it, what's the solution? Like what are you trying to solve with it? Because you can't just do it and think that that's going to solve all the issues.
Probably he wants his own kid, next to kin.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like you want your own kid that isn't beholden to a woman. Well, keep in mind if that tech comes out, laws are going to come with it. So.
Oh yeah, the government ain't gonna let men. No.
Like they're not gonna let the artificial womb come out without putting a shit ton of rules, regulations, and restrictions on it.
Because best believe women will be screeching like banshees on the street because they already know there's literally no point if those type of love bots become mainstream. It literally took the only purpose on why men wants to have a family with them or have a relationship with them so they can procreate and have a family.
You got to keep in mind like, there's a difference between like a love bot and an artificial womb. Those serve completely different purposes. The love bot is not for reproduction. That's for recreation.
He was talking about having the, pretty much a replica of a woman, like he'll be able to have the uteruses or whatever. He said with.
You don't need the woman for the uterus. All you need is a fucking like fleshlight with an incubator. Right,
because that's what he was trying to say. Do we need women with synthetic love box and uteruses? Yeah, you can. No. Just I agree. Just do it separately. If you
like you need to dissociate the woman from the uterus.
Who sent me oh, thank you very much for the sticker, Lord Messiah Disciple. Got that Halo thing going. But hey, that guy Pete, apologies for leaving you hanging. Do you have anything to say with our current conversation or?
Yeah, sure. Apologies for talking over you before, man. I didn't intend to do that.
No, I know that. I know when you and Greg get at it, it's just almost impossible to chime in. I just had to speak up.
No, that it was. I swear it was going to be my last word before I turned it over to you. I wasn't going to drag it out. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's different now compared to the Roman Empire, of course, is that we have the internet now, right? So, a chick can say like, oh, I'm different from all the other ones. It's like, yo, pull up the TikTok real quick and you could just see it. Right. So, yeah. I mean, times are different now. So the internet is eternal as like as long as you can just find a way to reestablish access to it, you can dig up all the shit again. But that being said, I mean, yeah, if a collapse happened, depending on how bad the collapse is, I mean, being together with someone because you actually like them, that's going to be a luxury in a post-collapse society. Companionship's not going to be the priority. Survival is going to be the priority. And I think you're going to see it reduced to a barter system, sex for resources. That's probably what's going to happen after the collapse. And they're going to change their tune really quick. Because as I said before, women, yeah, they have their own looks, money, and status, just as men have their own looks, money, and status now. And because of hypergamy, they've priced themselves out of the market. But when you collapse society and now your money means nothing, your social circles mean nothing. It's like, okay, well, now we're back to square one as evolution and nature intended. And that's what I would predict would happen. But again, these pairings wouldn't be out of genuine desire. They'd be out of convenience. So even then, I guess if your goal is to have a pairing based on genuine desire, you're still losing in that regard, I would say.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, they can still be strong and independent if they want in the collapse. It definitely won't get them far because
you better learn how to hunt.
Yeah, because unfortunately, for some reason, a lot of women or a lot of people in society, men and women, they don't give a shit about history, right? They only know about Logan Paul or Lady Gaga, where the fuck. When things collapse, so is everything that you stood stood for or everything that you accomplished, your accolades, unless you're part of the big old elite that pretty much saw it coming and they had some contingency plan, you're nothing, right? So this strong and independent corporate woman, she's reduced all the way back down to a sex object, whether
Yeah.
she likes it or not. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you did or who you are, you know.
hmm
Get with the program, or it's just not going to end well for you. Like that's literally how it went, in the
Mm.
collapse of society.
Yeah, and with the elites, it kind of reminds me of the vaults from Fallout or that hidden island in the storm in Gears of War 3, right? It's like they have their contingency plan too, but chances are you and I are not in the big club. And I think in a survival free for all, it's very difficult to have a moral compass. I think a moral compass is a luxury in that we are afforded in our first world society. But once the collapse happens, it's going to get dog eat dog pretty damn quick, and you're going to be forming alliances, trying to survive for as long as you can, and like that's pretty much what's going to be until we bounce back. But I think what's going to be different this time is now we've got like this cyber archive, the internet. And even if we lose access to it for a while, once we reestablish access to it, we can get all that stuff back. Because just because things collapse down here doesn't mean the satellites fall out of the sky up there. At least not right away. So, there may be hope, at least for preserving our sins, I guess, electronically speaking, so that we can look back on them versus, say, writing it in a history textbook where you can kind of make shit up as you go along.
That is true, because it's a lot difficult to lie when you're caught in 4K in the camera, right?
Exactly.
They're not professional, media groups that can, how do you say, manipulate the environment or manipulate the situation. Once it's there, is there, and people are not good at editing and make the context different, right? Whatever's on that video is on that video. So I definitely agree with that. And on top of that, I believe that alone will be scarring enough, right? Because when the collapse happens, once again, mainly going to be economically, then everything else may fall in. We don't have swords or axes or whatever anymore. We got weapons like guns. Like it's not, I'm gonna hack at you. You're gonna hack at me. If I run away, you can't catch me with your sword. Ha ha ha. Or, oh, you suck, I use your arrow. No, there will be people like,
it'll be like The Last of Us, but no zombies.
Yeah. And it's going to be a lot more savage and more bloodier than The Last of Us. People tend to underestimate how violent humans can get.
Yeah, all you got to do is just miss a few meals and get really, really hungry.
Exactly. Like, especially what happened. What was it? The Chinese guy, the one that killed. Well, he didn't kill.
Mao.
He did. Yeah, he killed around, was it 10 million estimated, or is it more than that? Through starvation and executions, people were literally eating each other. Which Gray, he specified plenty of times that if food is nowhere to be found, especially in the inner cities, you'd be surprised to know how quick people will resort to cannibalism. A lot of people, and just the torture devices alone that was created throughout history. You need to understand how crazy it'll get if there was actually a total collapse. Because it's either you or me, and I'd rather it be you.
Exactly. So, survival takes priority.
Yeah, your head shall roll. Like, it's pretty much that situation, because clean water is going to be a luxury. Food, don't even get me started on food. Medication will be a like, people will kill you just for the shirt off your back. Just imagine if there are people fighting over medicine or food or clean water. Gentlemen, it is going to get real. Like, I don't ever, if we do break down, I don't see the country getting back together again, right? It's only going to be settlements or establishments, right? Like they're just going to conquer a little bit of land, like, hey, we're our own country now, type situation.
There will be tribes, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, like on some Walking Dead stuff, like some Negan dude come out of nowhere, like I am Negan, you know, and just start doing some Alexander the Great conquest across the West. That's why I predict is going to happen when it comes to the situation. And why did this happen? I truly believe it is very similar to what happened in the Genesis. And let's say if you do believe in religion or not, right? I'm not dissing on religion. God did say that he will never ever flood the world ever again, right? After the situation with Noah. So what do you think he's going to be bringing next? Fire. And
Well, we already know 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: war, famine, pestilence, death.
right. So how do we get to and when all said and done, when the smoke clears and there's nothing but rubble and mutated people, depending if they use any type of nukes, how much you want to bet they're still going to blame men?
To answer that, I'd say look at Terminator 2.
Terminator
Like
2
men were like it was straight up like men were straight up blamed for Skynet.
Who created Skynet?
Well, corporations, governments, and whatnot. But that's the thing. Like Sarah Connor was very explicit that she blamed men for the creation of the weapons.
Oh, okay. I remember now. Okay, I remember that scene. When I got older and I saw a clip on YouTube, it was around 6 years ago. I was like, what the fuck? Like, so what? Women did nothing wrong? The fuck? Like,
Well, that's the thing. That's why when people are like, "Oh, movies today have all this anti-male messaging," it's like, you look back, you can see that it's just gotten less subtle. But even your favorite strong female characters were still pulling this same shit. It's not new. It's just less. It's just more obvious.
agreed. I'm gonna read these couple super chats right quick, and we will continue the conversation. Lower Messiah Disciple, thank you for the generous £5. That's pounds, right? I'm pretty sure it's pounds. I may be half human, but I'm all woman. Vigilante 8. That doesn't sound far off. Silas, thank you for the generous $5. I appreciate it, man. Yes, don't encumber the love bot with reproductive machinery. That's a special function for advanced home incubator. She must be the best lover homemaker.
Well, that's the thing. Like, lover, homemaker. Like, why are you trying to shove all these different things into one being? Why not have a separate tool for an individual purpose? I mean, you don't ask your dishwasher to do your laundry at the same time.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, Dwayne. It's something that doesn't have to be. See, and that's why, hell, right? That's why powerful men, they have a shit ton of concubines, a shit ton of, wives or whatever, right? Each person probably have a different function,
Yeah. And this is the other thing, like mentioned earlier, like looking for a relationship out of genuine desire. I think, quite honestly, that has always been a fantasy. That the male-female relationships, the ones that lasted the longest, they were out of mutual necessity. And then, essentially, the emotional equivalent of Stockholm Syndrome kicks in, and you're like, oh no, like, we genuinely love each other. It was always meant to be this way. And so it's like, no, if the both of you didn't need each other to survive for decades on end, then you wouldn't have put up with all the bullcrap. There was no fantasy power of love that kept you together through all the hard times. You needed each other, so you put up with shit that you wouldn't have put up with if you didn't need each other. And that goes both ways.
Which pretty much explains a lot of issues that's happening in developing or first world countries right now when it comes to the dating market. Because technically now the women don't have to deal with the patriarchy or the misogyny type situations. So now they're just spewing out, and once again, feminist ideology, and that plays a part. Just spewing, oh, men are bad, all men should die. Men. We should castrate our men. Oh, is that a male in my pregnant belly? Kill it. You know, that type of situation. And vice versa, right? Because of the revelations that modern women pretty much gave to us for the last 70, 80 years, now we're like, whoa, everything that we were taught since we were born is a lie. Women are actually like this when they quote unquote don't need a man. Fuck, I don't need to deal with this bullshit. Now there's more.
The thing is, it's not even that they don't need men. They still need men. It's
but
just that
hatred, right? The feminist bullshit and all that stuff. Blah, blah.
Okay, but that's the thing. They parrot that shit because they're taught to parrot it. Like, this is not something that all women arrive at organically.
Oh no, just first world countries, because I say a lot of them don't even comprehend how much work is put in to have them live that comfortable lifestyle. Like that men do. Right? They just believe.
Like here would be an interesting, actually, separate sort of question. Are women taught to hate their children, or do they just genuinely hate them and only like to them previously out of necessity?
Honestly, taught. Or it could be both. It depends. It could be or.
That's the thing. It's weird that we even have to kind of ask that question, because it was like, how many times have we heard like, oh, a mother's love for her child is unconditional, strongest love there is. They'll do anything. And then we look around, it's like, well, when a woman doesn't need her kids or they're inconvenienced by them, they're pretty quick to ice them.
Yeah, and Planned Parenthood, the statistics don't lie when it comes to that.
Okay, well, no, like that's the thing. That's that's abortion. I'm not just talking abortion. I'm talking just straight up yeeting their kids.
Yeah. But I was saying also, it went from, oh, maybe I shouldn't kill my child, because my parents are gonna be mad at me. I'm going to upset God. I need to have this baby. So, to be healthy, I was being irresponsible, having sex, blah blah blah. Now it's a clump of cells. Just get rid of it. I was speaking on that part. But I do see what you're saying when it comes to more and more cases showing up on the media of women literally yeeting their kids to heaven. You can't even explain why they did it. Sometimes they even say that God told me to do it.
Anything to dodge the accountability. And then how many times has it been the like, well, this hurts me more than it hurts you. Meanwhile, they're beating their kid with a tennis racket.
Oh, man.
I'm only doing this because I love you. Why did you make me do this to you?
And if they don't kill the kids, they will abandon their kids. Yes, I've actually seen that happen personally before. They will literally leave the kid in the middle of the street, actually, a baby in the middle of the street where traffic is there, or the common case in the dumpster, or just in front of somebody's random house, and they will just book it, run away like Forrest Gump. Right. And then when they get caught, and there's actual video, when they get caught, you see the mother and this, oh, that's my baby, bring back my baby. I'm like, why is your baby in the middle of the street? Oh, I don't know how it got there, blah, blah, blah. Your baby's only 2. Your baby's only like 1-2 years old. How'd your kid get here? Oh, I don't know. Just give me back my baby. Like,
yeah, okay. It's kind of like, it makes me wonder, because I've heard multiple instances of kids like wandering out of their apartment buildings and then freezing to death in the middle of winter. It's like, how the heck did this kid get past multiple sets of doors out into the middle of winter, and no one thought, hey, this might be a problem, middle of the night.
Kids aren't even, especially 1-2-1-year-olds, 2-year-olds. They're not even tall enough to even reach the door. The doorknob. So what really happened, huh? Oh, I don't know. I was just sleeping and the baby just. Okay, yeah, whatever, lady. I know what actually happened. It's just insane to the point where, the fact that we're so developed, first world countries, where things are just so goddamn comfortable. That's how chaotic things. It's, and we know it's a rule we've known for a while, right? The crazier shit gets, the more women will shut up and do what they're told and not complain about making a sandwich, right? A good example is Venezuela or Ukraine right now. Those are the two biggest examples. But there's plenty of examples throughout history where their life is on the line, or when they know they will die without a man, or they will die by themselves. Oh, being in the kitchen, giving their hubby a glass of water. Oh, it doesn't seem so bad now, does it? Oh, what happened to being treated like a slave? Oh, now it's not a big deal no more? Oh, how the tables turn, or the turntables. And that's what I'm talking about. In first world countries, men literally do not ask for much. In fact, I believe men don't ask enough.
Well, no, that's the thing. It's men having low standards that permits this shit in the first place.
Yeah, but at the same time, with women knowing that, the state and, how society is literally against men at the moment, they can pull that nonsense of if she's about to go out with a mini dress, no underwear, looking like she's about to head to the club, right? And she's like, oh, I'm just going to the grocery store. And the husband's like, hey, I don't want you wearing that. Why are you so controlling? Why are you so this? Why are you so that? And then she's going.
Okay, but that's the thing. If they got to the point where, their woman's already doing that, it's not because the man had high standards before. Like, the man always had low standards if he's with a woman that does that.
But at the same time, I always say before, it's not if she'll do it. It's the fact that she has a capability to do it at any time in a first world country. She could wake up one day, she'd be like, you know what? Fuck this guy. I can find something better. And then she will do the switcheroo and start acting different.
Yeah.
And what can he do about it, right? Especially if he's married. It's like, fuck. I've been with her for like 10 years now.
He can do plenty of things about it. He just doesn't want to pay the price.
Right. And I don't blame a good amount of men for it, because he thought that the girl wouldn't change, right? About the girls are sugar and spice and everything nice, the nonsense he was taught throughout his life. What's up?
Well, that's the thing. Like, blame, there's a difference between acknowledging that there's a severe price you're not willing to pay and saying there's nothing I can do about it.
True.
It's like all those people who were like, well, I had no choice to get the hokey pokey. I was going to lose my job if I didn't. It's like, no, you had a choice. You made a choice. You didn't not have a choice.
I agree. But I don't blame the man that believes that the price is too high to pay, especially if he invested decades into his investments and career. It's very hard for that man to let go.
Again, I'm not saying that they can't find the price too high to pay. It's how they talk about it and frame it. If they say the price is too high to pay, that's like, yeah, okay. If they say, well, there's nothing I can do, then I'm like, nah, bro, you could admit that there is something you could do.
Yeah, I didn't say you were wrong.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is there's plenty of men out there that definitely they know they fucked up and there's no way out of it, and they just hope that
No.
they don't get
No.
financially ruined.
Again, like the phrasing, no way out of it. No, there's a way out of it.
That's their mentality. That's what I'm trying to say.
And that's the mentality I find problems with, that there's
But-
no way out.
I'm saying this because it's a lot harder to bounce back when you're 50 or 60 compared to if you're 30 or 40, because at that point you're possibly going to have to work for work for a couple decades longer to get back on your feet, depending on how much she takes from the divorce or whatever and how much alimony he has to pay. Now,
Well, okay, well, let me ask you this. Is it harder to bounce back from a divorce now or harder to bounce back from a divorce 5 years from now?
well, you said, wait, 5
If the
years?
argument is that I'm older, so it's going to be harder, it's not going to get easier tomorrow.
What I'm saying is time is money. So when it comes to that aspect, it's a lot easier for a younger person to bounce back than an older person.
But we don't get younger as time passes.
See, but that's a dilemma that I was trying to say, And once again, I didn't say you were wrong. I was just trying to speak on their behalf on why they put up with their wives' chaotic fucking Jezebel behavior. Yeah,
and I'm saying that they're fools to do that by saying like, oh well, it's going to be harder for me to bounce back than it was when I was younger. I'm going to say, look, dude, just because you accept it now doesn't mean that she's not going to pull the plug on you down the line. If you know that this shit is fucked, it's better for you to do it now because it's not going to be easier later.
I agree. All I'm saying is I do see where they're coming from on why they have that mentality. I still say divorce them as soon as possible, right? For example, Will Smith. Even though Will Smith is not really the best example because he will still have around $200 to $300 million after everything is settled with that divorce. So when it comes to the average man, right, or above average man, right, because women only go for higher than themselves, they're too afraid of how much they're going to lose, and it's just like and a good amount of them are simps as well, right? So they will feel quote unquote loss without the wifey. A lot of blue pillish, simpish behavior. But I do agree with what you said. The sooner you divorce, the better, because the sooner you divorce, the sooner you can bounce back. But these married men, they have the opposite mindset.
Yeah. And I'm just saying that the mindset is wrong. And I'm just not going to support it. I'm going to call it as there's always something you can do, and there's no reason to not get divorced today when the odds are damn good you're going to get divorced later.
True. That guy Pete, based on our current conversation, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, which topic do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about mothers' attitudes towards kids, or do you want to talk about this divorce thing?
Let's do the divorce thing, then the kids.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with Gray that, look, there's an ideal mindset that if something is clearly bad for you, you probably want to get out of that situation sooner rather than later. Otherwise, you're just kind of sitting in a sunk cost, so to speak, right?
Oh, you do see why.
But I do see that a lot of men, especially the ones that are still kind of in the blue pill mindset, they really believe like, oh, I can make it work. I can make it work. And listen, man, if she just doesn't like you, there's nothing you could really do, right? So I would agree with Gray that, the minute you realize like this is bad for me, you should probably just get the fuck out of there. I mean, what else are you gonna do? You like Gray said, you can go to the lawyer, you can get the divorce papers, you can serve your wife with the divorce papers. You could do that if you want to. It's just that they're not choosing to do that. And, you know,
Well,
if you want to get into the psychology of, well, why aren't they choosing that? It could be a million different reasons why.
well, I say one of the main thing is a lot of these men out here, the blue pill men, they've
Mhm.
been raised since they've been very young that
Mhm.
marriage is the ultimate goal. That is their happiness in life. And when it doesn't go their way, it's pretty much an existential crisis at that point.
Yeah,
For
this is kind of why I'm against marriage in general, because I think like a standard relationship, it's a lot easier to get out of one of those than it is to get out of a marriage.
right.
I think like at least with a relationship, there's always like the doors kind of like creaked open, while with marriage, like the door's closed and there's like 5 locks on it, and you're just like going through all these hurdles just to get the door open so you can get the hell out of there. So that's why I'm
Yeah.
kind of against signing the contract altogether.
I agree.
Actually, there's a funny bit by Louis C.K. on that.
Hmm.
Because he was like, when I was married, I thought there's no way I can leave. There's no way I can leave. And then after the first kid is born, he's like, holy shit, I could have left.
Yeah. And it gets more difficult the more invested you get, like with kids and shit like that. It complicates things even more, which is also why I'm not really too keen on having kids.
Because here's the thing, you can't pay child support if there's no kids.
Exactly. Precisely.
I wouldn't want to bring kids in this world right now anyway. And if you guys still decide to do it, chat, good luck, because we already explained countless times of what's going on out there. But
Yeah, it's
before
your
you
call.
continue with the mom thing, Pete, if you want to support your boy Siri Yeetus, there's 2 links on top of the chat: Cash App and PayPal. Those 2 links are the best possible way to donate because it goes directly to me. Or you can do the super chats or super thanks. Any type of donation is appreciated, but if you can't donate, not a big deal. Let's get back to this good shit.
Right.
What were you gonna say?
So we're gonna go to the other topic now, right? Like mothers' attitudes towards kids and shit like that.
Right.
So I think like throughout the process when you're carrying the baby for 9 months, like that's in a way that's kind of like a deeply personal bond there. And I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense, right? That, you know, assuming like the mother is wired correctly, she's going to have some kind of bond with the kid, and she has a vested interest in protecting that because when she gets pregnant, she has a lot of investment, paternally speaking, or parentally speaking, rather. I'm sorry. So you could look at it and say, well, yeah, there's a genetic hereditary predisposition to be like that, but that doesn't mean that it always plays out that way. That's the first thing. Look at cases like Casey Anthony, for example. That went over really well, right? Not so much. But you also have social and environmental influences like the feminist movement that could influence how our genetics express themselves. I think Undead Chronic, he talked about this epigenetics, right? How the environment sort of interacts with our genes. And we get very interesting outcomes when social engineering comes into play. And now you have a whole generation of women who think like, oh yeah, just go make a baby, egg, and cheese at the clinic. There's nothing wrong with that. And when you try to challenge them that it's a little bit more than cells, it's like, nah, it's just cells. But then those same people will tell you that cells on Mars are life, right? So it's just interesting how the environment and the genes kind of interact with each other to kind of, I don't know, change how we operate. But the question becomes the environment that we're in, does that influence the genes for long enough time, for enough generations that becomes the new normal, where parental investment in children overall by mothers goes down significantly? I don't think enough time has passed. Like I said, I think if shit hit the fan and collapsed, they would go right back into default mode. Protect the kids, you know, try to make a deal, sex for resources with a guy. If that means that one guy has the most resources, multiple women will make a deal with that guy and he'll have a harem. Like that's probably what's going to happen. But because of the socially engineered first world country that we have these attitudes where, you know, on the face, it looks like women just don't give a shit about parental investment. At least the ones that go to the clinic and shit like that regularly or abandoning their kids and stuff in favor of things like partying and living their best life, quote unquote. But again, it doesn't really serve their goals. And honestly, they're screwing themselves. They're making themselves less marketable on the dating market. And in the end, it's them who lose, not us. But yeah, those are my thoughts on parental investment from the female perspective, at least as I see it as a guy.
Well, that's something for me to think about. You did a lot of explaining that I haven't thought of at first. You're definitely on point, Pete. I definitely agree, especially with or would the genes alter themselves depending on the environment? I'm like, you know what? That's a good question.
Yeah,
No,
Chronic
so
could probably tell
we-
you more about that.
Yeah.
If you
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing with epigenetics. It's that the genes activate. They're not changing per se. Like the same information is there. It's just different. Let's say files are opened.
correct.
It's and this is the other thing. Like if there was any sort of genetic selection, well, being a shitty parent is not genetically selected for by its very nature. Like you're
No.
not going to pass on your genes if you're making a breakfast sandwich out of your babies.
Correct. But you also have to factor in whether or not a gene or genes rather is sufficiently deleterious, which means basically, are the genes bad enough that the environment would say, all right, select this out of the genome? Like I said at
Well-
the very beginning, there's fast life strategy and slow life, where some are, high parental and some are high parental investment, not fucking around much. And then there's other people like Casey Anthony, low parental investment, more going out partying and fucking around. And depending on environmental factors, like you said, the genome is all you could ever be. And the environment sort of activates these things like on switches and off switches or something
Well,
like that.
Well, no, that's the thing. This is where Chronic talks about dysgenics and in our dysgenic society.
Exactly.
Because, like, it's not so much that we're encouraging it, it's that we're not punishing it. Though, like, if you have genes that make you a shitty mother, you still have, in the modern day, an equal chance of reproduction.
Correct. So therefore, you have people who they're kind of shit, right? From a genetic perspective. But because we have the safety nets of a first world society, genes that otherwise, like in a collapsed society, we'd look at that like, oh, this person's a bad bet for a parent. Now we just, we accidentally empty the clip on a Friday night after a few drinks. And it's like, shit, now we got a kid. And it's like, well, fuck, I didn't think this through. And yeah, that's kind of what happens when you're dealing with this sort of stuff.
Precisely. It's not so much that we're promoting it, it's we're not discouraging it.
Precisely, because with the old system, we did have social norms and stigmas that basically dissuaded people from engaging in behaviors that would have a negative impact on the group. But now we don't really think about the group like the tribe anymore. Now we think on much more individualistic levels, which, it has its merits, but clearly you can see that sometimes it goes a little too far where it's like you're only doing what's best for yourself, but at the expense of everyone else, which could be a bad thing if your decisions affect enough people negatively. Dysgenic, as you say.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the whole, like, oh, every life matters. We're trying to save everybody. No, that's a dysgenic society.
You can't save everybody. Some people are going to walk off the cliff. There's nothing you can do in that regard.
Yeah, and you're going to take resources from the people who will benefit you in the long run and give them to people who will sabotage you in the long run.
Correct.
And that's why, well, at least one of the reasons why this current society is so beyond screwed and beyond salvation, because like we'll bend over backwards and sacrifice the good to keep the bad going. It's like cutting off. It's like you're cutting off your arm to eat it so that you can feed the tapeworm.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, our society is rife with situations where we just slap band-aids on problems and don't solve them, because actually confronting the problem at the root, at least it's perceived to have a much higher upfront cost, despite the fact that that upfront cost could lead to a better benefit long term. People just want quick and dirty, least resistance. That's what they want. So when you tell them, you got to actually put a little bit of work in to solve this problem, they're like, nah, fuck you, I ain't doing that. And a first world safety net gives them the luxury to just say that to you. But put them in a collapsed society, they'll change their tune pretty damn quick.
But that's the thing. Like, that's why, honestly, I think that may be another factor is why most divorces are initiated by women. Not just because they're more likely to do it, but because since men pay a higher cost, they will stick around in a bad situation, even if in the long term, like if a man realizes how screwed he is at 40, but decides to tough it out for the relationship or whatever justification he throws out.
Correct.
And then he gets divorced at 60. Is like, dude, you could have rebuilt your life by this point.
True, and that's
And
actually and that's actually perhaps a side effect of a first world society that might potentially benefit men, in the sense that a lot of men think like, if I divorce this woman, my life is over. It doesn't necessarily have to be, because again, you live in a first world society where, again, you could kind of do the bootstraps approach and reinvent yourself and build yourself up again. But I think a lot of guys, like you said, they kind of are over invested in that sunk cost, and they think, oh, if I jump ship now, it's like, I think my life is over. And unfortunately, a lot of men do think that way. Yeah.
All right. So I guess yeet. Where are we going from here?
Okay, so great conversation though. I was just listening the entire time, just being a spectator. When it comes to, on the societal level of, order and chaos, you guys do agree that right now order is pretty much almost in shambles at the moment.
On our level, yes.
Okay.
But I guess the thing, it's not, I wouldn't say it's universally spread.
No,
Because, again, we have to look for who's in control. Like, the people at the very top, their lives are not chaos. They're incredibly stable.
nope, just the masses. I was talking about the masses.
Yeah. Yeah, the masses, I guess, where the women have the authority, there is chaos. And there is no woman standing at the very top of the society. There is no matriarch of the Rothschilds.
Agreed. I completely freaking agree when it comes to that. And side note, the black community is pretty much a matriarchy, whether people want to argue with me or not. Black community in America is literally a matriarchy. And look at where we're at right now. Just putting it out there. I know there's other factors, but the matriarchy thing is one of the main reasons why we don't really have as many strong leaders as we should in our community.
That's anytime a black strong leader shows up, he usually dies under questionable circumstances or has everything pulled out from underneath him by a woman.
Yeah, he took his own life with 6 shotgun blasts in the back of his head from 20 feet away. Very unfortunate situation. Or yeah, the woman, right? Even his own female family members as well. Literally, that you are the workhorse of the family, and no matter what you literally, gentlemen, when it comes to the women in the black community, think about feminism to the fucking extreme. Like, you guys, I'm telling you, unless you have black family members or you've been around the black community, you guys have no idea how bad it is when it comes to how women treat their men as literal workhorses, and they only respect the worst of men. You guys can see it through the hip hop videos, and the good men, good black men that's out there, they literally want to talk trash and talk horrible, and they freak out when the good black man decides to venture out and date other women. So the very same women, so the very same black men that they despise, they think they're lame or they're gross, are mad that they're looking for other women. They're mad that they can't treat this one black guy as trash, and they can glorify and worship the Pookie and Ray Rays, the drug dealers, the clown sound rappers, whatever the fuck you want to call them. I'm telling you, gentlemen, unless you've been around that community, It's hard to fathom how bad it is when it comes to the quote unquote family unit of black families. It's literally the epitome of a matriarchy. It's almost complete, in my opinion. I believe Black America will be the first successful matriarchy. It's almost there, but it's not there yet. Like,
And not, but that's the thing. Is it, can you, okay, like, yes, it's a matriarchy, but that only goes up to a certain point. Because the matriarchy ends when the government begins.
so just the family unit of itself, right?
But that's the thing. Like that's a successful matriarchy in the same sense that the bonobos are the successful matriarchy. They can only survive by like a highly generous environment.
Right.
As soon as that generous environment goes, they'll collapse.
I'm just saying, like, they, unlike, in my opinion, unlike majority of other women from other races, black women, they literally go for the fucking worst of the worst and procreate with them. You know.
Well, okay, but think about that, because the worst of the worst are defying the highest authority, the government.
Right. Agreed.
Like, yeah, it's bad for the society in a long run.
Oh no!
But like, are you gonna have? But would you inherently have more respect for the guy who goes, like, screw the man, screw the government? I'm not gonna follow his instructions, and makes money off the books, or the guy who bootlicks the government?
You see, but you know that's oh, we're about to go down a rabbit hole. That's what I'm talking about. When it comes to they want these type of guys that wants to make their own money on the side and stuff, but just like in the movie Boys in the Hood, the guy that played Morpheus, I forgot what his name was. He explains, like, you really think that these dope dealers out there is slanging and doing their thing and being that rebel? No. Where do black people got the boats? Where do they have the planes? How do they even get the drugs in the first place? Why are they dying for corners that they don't even own? You think they run shit, but they don't run shit. Just like what you said, Gray. It only gets to a point before the big dogs get involved, the government.
I think it's Lawrence Fishburne you're thinking of.
Yes, legendary actor. I love that dude.
Oh yeah, great work.
But like you said before, it only gets to a certain point before the big dogs get involved, like the government. Like, the government has high influence, in my opinion, in the black community. Just not directly, indirectly. You know, and it's been happening for a while, or around the same time modern feminism came about in the 1960s. And now it's gotten to the point where you see how much more feminine our black men are getting at this point, right? That's how crazy it's getting, because there's way more single mothers than actual, nuclear family black households. You know, and now they're endorsing men in general, but especially black men, to be weak, frail, effeminate, high crime, fuck them hoes. You know, it's a recycling situation that's only getting worse, and we don't have enough strong, conservative black men that are able to put their foot down, because they're nowhere to be found. A lot of them, they ventured out of the black community. They're like, fuck this. There's no saving this community. I'm going somewhere else. Because, yeah, I know other races of women, they do the same, but it's not even close to the severity as the black women in the black community. Would you agree with that? At least Becky, at least Maria, at least I don't know an age name. They know to an extent they have to keep some type of dignity to even have a chance to have a family with a simp or man or whatever.
I think a lot of that's parental influence. Because keep in mind, like the black community was very much the testing ground for these particular government policies. So
Oh, the
I
government
wouldn't be.
has influence to this day. I can definitely say that, right?
That's the
Not
thing. So,
directly.
but how many generations? The thing, I don't know if it's exclusive because of any sort of inherent factors or just because they've been influenced in this way the longest and hardest, like with the most aggressive advertising, with the greatest amount of pandering.
Yeah. Like for example, there's some great artists out there that are, that are black, great black and black men and women artists that make awesome music, right? But they, how do you say, they pander to the moon. They put the Cardi B's and the Megan Thee Stallions and all these rappers that just rap about WAP or selling drugs or killing one another, pushing those people to the top constantly for the last at least 30 years, 25, 30 years. No, nothing meaningful, nothing that could have a positive message is pushed to the brink. Besides J. Cole or Kendrick Lamar, type of music. Yeah, like they're the exceptions, right? But the majority of music that's being pushed these days that, a lot of young black women or black men be seeing on the camera, they think that is normal for a bunch of women twerking and thongs while the dude's high off cocaine, throwing money everywhere. Hey, drink this purple lean. You see it? You have it in your medicine cabinet. Just pour it in there. Just put a little Sprite in there. Make sure you put some Jolly Ranchers. Yeah, sip that shit. And now we got a good amount of people in the black community that are hooked on a good amount of drugs that these rappers, these thuggos promote, on social media or through music. It's a very
But that's where it goes. Here's where the extra sinister bit goes, because it's not just about the promotion in that sense, like to screw them that way. It also works to destroy the culture, because like what ideals, what mythology. Like let's be honest, like it's so much because like Black America's mythology, like they don't really have it. I mean, shit, like the closest you could say that they have to it nowadays is fucking Wakanda, and that was not invented by black people.
Oh no. The closest we have is the Underground Railroad. That wasn't really a mythology, really,
But that's the thing, like, but it wasn't like made by black people for black people, like.
The Underground Railroad was made for the Black Americans to escape the South. That's a great story that's told to this day. Is made into folklore. Made into songs or whatever. But besides that, I agree. We don't really have anything of our own for the most part. We were close. In the sense of Black Wall Street, but what happened with that one?
That's the thing, but there's the desire for that. Clearly, there's the desire for that, and it's being filled. It's being filled by white made media, or white in quotes made media. If you know what I mean. Yeah, Hollywood.
And then it was pushed by Hollywood is just nothing but negative stereotypes or negative decisions that a lot of young black men and women are looking up to and watching.
And then any decent black character, like, compares Cyborg from like the Teen Titans animated series like several years ago to to like Cyborg in the latest thing where they give him a freaking fro. Yeah, just
I remember that.
like they take what good characters are made and they destroy them.
Yeah, the only decent one I know about so far is what's his name? Miles Morales. It hasn't been messed up yet.
Well, keyword yet, but even he is like he wasn't original. Like he's Black Spider-Man. Like let's not beat around the bush there.
Right.
And now he's also like Black Thor, and literally like Miles Morales is the Black Avengers. It's Miles Morales with Miles Morales with Miles Morales featuring Miles Morales.
It's like seeing Black Superman. They thought about playing Michael B. Jordan as Black Superman. I'm not gonna lie. Like, no, that's not how it works. You stick with the story, but you know how Hollywood is.
Oh yeah, well no, the latest thing is Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Targaryens.
Yeah.
Yeah, now there's a Black Targaryen.
Why?
Because current year.
Oh my god. What? That's my biggest issue with Hollywood. Why do they always take something that's great and then just label it as, oh yeah, they're gay now. Oh yeah, paraplegic now. Oh yeah, he's Asian now. Like, oh my god.
Because it's about destroying the culture.
Yeah, you're right. Oh my god, it's like, yeah, why can't y'all make your own shit? Why you gotta take our shit? But once again, Gray, it's destroying the culture.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Like, if they genuinely cared about being like, hey, here's a Black superhero made by a Black creator that is genuinely good, then they'd be promoting the shit out of Young Ripa's stuff right now. Instead, they're doing everything they can to undermine it.
Oh man, you know what? That is a perfect explanation. Yeah, his stuff will be pushed to the fucking moon right now if they actually cared about representation. You know,
they actually cared about original Black superheroes, Black creators. Like, if they genuinely cared, they'd pump that shit out, and it'd be on every fucking comic book shelf.
And was he able? I don't know if you've been keeping up. Was he able to get his money back?
He's definitely got a good chunk of it. I don't know about the fight in detail, but
fucking. This is why I'm only having PayPal temporarily, because I'm still trying to switch to something like what you did, like Subscribestar or Patreon, or something easy for the subs to donate to, because it ain't no fucking way I'm keeping PayPal for long.
Yeah, I gotta pump into Subscribestar harder and figure out how to shill it properly.
Exactly. Cash App is the best possible way, gentlemen. So if you want to support your boy, Sir Yeetus, 2 links on top of the chat. PayPal, Cash App, best possible way to donate. But once again, super chat or super thanks. If you cannot donate, it is all good. Okay, we're just gonna continue with my rant. That guy Pete, do you have anything to say when it comes to Hollywood or my rant when it came to the Black community?
I mean, as a white dude, what am I really going to say about the Black community? How can I even begin to relate to that, right? But what I can say is that the problems that we see in the general population, it's obvious if you just look at TikToks. Yes, there is a hyper focus where the problems that are plaguing the general population as a result of, third wave feminism in particular, yes, it is highlighted and like on steroids in the Black community. I can say that much, but beyond that, I can't really say I offer much insight on it.
Oh, it's all good. It's pretty much outside looking in. That's why I said if you haven't been around that community, it's going to be kind of difficult.
I mean, I live in New York City, so we got a little bit of everything. But it's not like I go to the cookouts. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I don't really fully understand and appreciate what's going on, like in intricate detail. But I mean, yeah, the superhero thing. In regards to that, I think, yeah, like you said, if they really were looking for original art and stuff like that, they'd be putting that on the shelves. But I think what they want to do is they want to change the perception of what we traditionally saw superheroes as. They want to basically, like, I guess, rinse out what they perceive as the white patriarchal image of whatever. They want to just kind of like rinse that out and pretend it never happened. And, something is definitely lost in that regard. I kind of agree with Gray that, having original stuff, that's true diversity. That's really people bringing their own unique take on things to the table instead of just, constantly remastering these movies, reinventing these books and doing all these things like that. That's old shit. Like, leave that alone and just come up with something new. But I think, honestly, another unfortunate side effect of just like internet and technology and stuff like that is we kind of lost our creative spirit, I would say, in the Western world as a result of that. Because now we just have everything so easy, right? Everything's so easy. There's an app for everything. So the idea of just kind of going out and creating something on your own, I guess most people just aren't thinking like that. And when people do go out and create their own thing, they often get ridiculed and ignored until they become successful, that is. Then all of a sudden everybody wants to be their friend, but that's nothing new.
I completely agree with what you said. I completely agree. It's honestly, a lot of this stuff is a farce to the point where the person that donated, thank you very much for the $2 donation smash. Cultural Marxists create nothing and only deconstruct. Yeah, that's a great way to put that together. So when it comes to this topic that we're talking about, when it comes to the order and chaos, do you believe that, how do I explain it? The first world countries pretty much destabilizes everything to the point where it's like, do you believe the lack of interdependency is the main culprit, pretty much? Like, men are saying they don't need women no more, women are saying they don't need men no more, and and it is getting to the point where the lack of interdependency is the main culprit of things going downhill, at least in the dating market situation. What do you think about that, Pete?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at, again, there's like like the first world society, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Our physiological needs, our security needs, we take these things for granted, right? And things like, relationships and self-esteem and, manosphere, we talk about self-actualization a lot. These things sort of take a front seat now because we don't really have to think about our third world problems. And as a result of that, men and women are kind of looking at each other now. Well, I could just support myself, so I don't need you anymore. And there's two sides to that. On the upside, you're not getting into relationships ideally because you're trying to use the other person for something because you don't have to. And on the other side, you could, again, pretty unlikely in a first world country nowadays, but not impossible. The idea of being with someone just because you like them, that is something that you can afford to do because survival is not an issue anymore. But I think when you look at it in abstract, there definitely is a much more individualist attitude in our modern society. We don't really think about the family unit. You don't think about the local community with your neighbors and all that shit. It's just kind of like everybody's just on their own, doing their own thing, which again, some people might argue, okay, there's benefits to that, but also the cons to that. But I look at it like at the end of the day, we're all humans and we should be, connecting with one another, which I think is a big reason why this community exists, because deep down we all want connection of some kind. So we realize we're not alone in the world in how we think and what we experience. But yeah, there's definitely been huge degradation in intersex relations and as well as sense of community, for sure. Definitely just kind of more of a chaotic free-for-all in favor of a well-structured community and order. Definitely has kind of been what we're seeing.
Completely agree with what you said. definitely on point when it came to everybody's pretty much thinking for themselves. But the key difference, in my opinion, when it comes to majority of men versus majority of women is women, they expect men to, like you said before, women want to have their cake and eat it too. They still expect men to hold their end of the traditional contract.
True, but they're going to pay the price whether they want to or not. Because at the end of the day, if you're a woman right now, let's say you're in your late teens or early 20s and you're debating, should I quote unquote go live my best life? Just understand you're employing a fast life strategy where you are engaging in low parental investment and you're just being reckless, sexually speaking. So by doing that, you're already alienating the men who have more reserved attitudes towards sex, which might be the more marriage-minded men. You're already alienating them. And on top of that, probably the average guy probably isn't going to be too keen on the fact that you've been around the block, because it's embarrassing to find out through third parties that your girl's been around. That's embarrassing. And the last thing a man wants to do is look incompetent in front of his peers. He doesn't want that. And also, at the end of the day, if that's the life you've chosen, the only options you're going to have are men who are desperate enough to accept that, and you're not going to respect that guy, let alone admire or desire him, or you're just going to keep going to the guys who pump and dump you. And if you're the type of woman where you want companionship or a relationship or something like this, going down this path will not get you that. I can guarantee you that. And I think that's kind of what we've been talking about since day one. So, yeah.
Okay. What about you, Gray? Do you have anything to say about the lack of interdependency in society?
Well, that's the thing. I think that it's a human's self-interest. I don't think it's anything particularly new, but the lack of interdependency means that there's very little benefit, in fact, increased risk to associating with someone else. And that's what's really breaking things down, is there's no hardship that requires someone else to be the glue.
Okay. So
I disagree that a relationship where you don't have to be together, you genuinely like each other, is ideal. I genuinely think that is terrible. An absolute terrible reason to get into a relationship, because it will not survive. It's based on emotions, completely temporary, completely arbitrary, and subject to change at a moment's notice. It is incredibly unstable. You're building a house on sand.
I agree. Emotions are fleeting.
Like, it's nice for the validation, but like, that's not what a relationship is formed on. I mean, heck, at most that's what a friendship is formed on. But even then, like, a friendship, you're not having kids over a friendship. You're not engaged. Like, you wouldn't be like, oh, hey, I get along with this person, therefore I should start a business with them. Like, people who do that typically lose their businesses.
That's true.
So,
so
it's a nice romantic idea, but I just think it's a terrible thing to do in practice. And it should not be idealized. It's a fantasy and should be treated as such.
Which is why I agree with that guy Pete when he says it's literally a luxury to even use I like someone as a factor, unless you're living in the comfortable first world society we're in right now. But even then, I do agree with Gray, basing a serious relationship off of, oh, I like this person, the relationship is pretty much doomed from the start. I am a personal believer of relationships is not about this quote unquote love bullshit. It's not about that. It's never been about that. It shouldn't be about that. But you know how it is with today's women and their far out delusions of what relationships are. It's about duty. It's about making sure that I make sure you good, you make sure that I'm good, and we're gonna work together to the point where we can help create the next generation of productive members of society or the tribe, depending how big or small your community is. that's pretty much the gist of what being in a relationship is all about. Marriage is definitely that as well, but marriage is used to be used as a tool for political purposes or, you know, uh, treaties. You know, like now that we're pretty much family at this point, now that your son married my daughter, you know, this is pretty much a truce that we be able to live in peace. Well, what do you have to say about that, Pete?
I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, if you're signing on for a marriage and having kids and stuff like that, you're signing on for something bigger than either of you, right? So I was talking in terms of the luxury, it's more like along the lines of just like a generic LTR, perhaps. But yeah, you obviously have to factor in things like, do you have common values? Are you like-minded? Are you socio-sexually compatible? Which just is a fancy way of saying, what are your attitudes towards casual sex? For example, a highly promiscuous person and someone who's more sexually reserved, probably going to be a bad pairing, right? Shit like this,
Agreed.
aka the red flags we always talk about.
Well,
Right?
but let's be honest. Like, even if you're both comfortable with casual sex, that is just a recipe for STDs.
Sure.
That's how, like, that's how you get monkeypox.
Sure, but someone who's more sexually reserved, like myself, I wouldn't even think about that. Like if I were to find out information like that, that would kill my attraction almost instantaneously. But I can't speak for every man. That's just me. But the point is that when you have a first world society where everyone kind of is individualistic. Like I said, they manage their own money. They got their own status. They got their own social circle. As long as shit isn't collapsing, which again, it may, but as long as we have this safety net, people can kind of just go with who they want. And if it doesn't work, you can just kind of split and that's the end of it, assuming you don't sign the contract, which I think is insane to do. But once shit collapses, you're going to see really quick the transactional relationships out of necessity for survival take priority. So never forget that whatever our idealized image of anything is, it is just that. It's an ideal. It's a luxury that we can currently afford, but that may not be forever. And I think people who are kind of drinking that Kool-Aid need to be mindful of that and realize that the rug can get pulled out from under them the minute shit collapses. And the people that they think they know, they may not know as well as they think they do.
Agreed. And whether, modern women admit or not, they have some influence when it comes to this collapse. They ain't going to try to get into the meats and potatoes. We could, but we'll be here for another hour. We as men, I'm talking about the conservative men, we are going to have to rebuild. You don't have to rebuild society, or you can at least rebuild around you, right? Because society, as we know it, is no more. That's pretty much the gist of agent of chaos and agent of order. That's literally has been the cycle since civilizations has been about, right? When things go crazy, when things go chaotic, they always look at the men to pick up the pieces, always. And I already see that is going to happen again very soon, right? But this time, besides all the other previous downfalls in history, we actually have proof, solid proof, caught in 4K proof of the malicious and horrible behavior modern women have been conducting for the last 60 years at least. But let's keep it more recent, at least for the last 17 years when social media exploded. There's countless information. If the internet is still around and if it's still able to work again, it will give us millions of reasons why feminism should not be a part of influence anymore. And I don't know how that will work. I don't know how that will come about to make sure that doesn't happen again, but something needs to be done because we cannot let something like this happen again, right? And once again, I know there's various factors on why men hasn't done anything yet. But a big factor is feminism is a big factor. They raise men for the last 60, 70 years to be weak. Now the way raising them to be confused, emotional, effeminate, frail, just weak, full of soy. A lot of foods that we eat has soy. It's gotten to that point, gentlemen. I forgot the percentage because people have been saying this lately of how much testosterone men has lost within the last was it like 50, 60 years? I forgot the percentage, but men in general lost a lot of testosterone. And in my opinion, well played state, well played powers to be, because their plan worked. Because they gave power, or they gave leeway to model women, kicked out the masculine men out of the home all the way since 1960, have the women raise men on how to be men. And now we got waves of men, waves of weak men running through society, and weak men are easier to control. So I say to you, well played, well played. A lot of critical thinkers like us, we see what's going on, but we know to the rest of the masses, they don't care. They're too focused on the TikTok dances and stuff. What do you have to say about that, Gray?
Yeah, that's like there's just not much that we can currently do about it, and that's one of the more frustrating aspects of it. Like we kind of have, okay, well, there's stuff we can do, but the consequences aren't worth the effort. I mean, if you were to tidy up the gene pool by yourself, you wouldn't even be able to make a dent in it before you yourself were removed. So,
agreed. What about you, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the mind that in the macro sense, there's, again, the elites, they're well entrenched. There's nothing you could really do to change what they have planned. But if their plan is as shit as we are hypothesizing it is, then as Gray aptly put, the ball will bounce eventually. And when the ball does bounce, things will change and revert back to, sort of what would happen in a hunter-gatherer type world, plus guns, of course. But I suppose in the meantime, however, it would be more productive, whether it's man or woman listening to this podcast, it would be more productive, again, despite the cons of individualism, there are pros to individualism, to sort of just kind of prioritize that and see what you can do to increase the quality of your life on a personal level, as opposed to worrying too much about things beyond your locus of control. And even if hypothetically, as Gray said, this wasn't the locus of your control, the juice probably wouldn't be worth the squeeze to try to make waves, because you probably wouldn't even make waves. You'd make a minor ripple at best, and then they just swat you away like a fly. So you might as well just on the micro scale, work with what you got to do the best you can. I mean, I heard a quote once that said, life's not about getting dealt a good hand. It's about learning to master playing a poor hand well. And that's sort of kind of what you have to do in this moment, day to day, because that's all we're doing. We're all going through this day by day.
I actually heard a great quote from one of my favorite webcomics. It's a good thing rich people have money, otherwise they'd never survive.
True, exactly. Make the money and status irrelevant. What do they have left?
Yeah.
I'm reading this comment right quick. My bad. Real talk. Thank you for the generous $5 donation. I greatly appreciate it, man. Repairing the human interaction and social cohesion isn't possible with smartphones and social media. Tools used to create a I can't say that word. Fuck.
Solipsistic.
Yeah, that stuff. Society. So pretty much saying they're just to themselves, unaware, just on their phones and just doing their thing. Pretty much extreme individualism. Pretty much, or
yeah, because anyone could just go on their phone, just type with their fingers, and just go bleh, here's my worldview. How do you like that? And then you just have too many voices speaking at once, and then nothing of substance actually sticks. That's kind of the idea.
Okay.
And there's also no consequences. Like people are so comfortable with the lack of violence.
True. Back in the old days, you talk some stupid shit, somebody would come up to you and chin check you real quick, but you don't really have that with a keyboard or a phone. Yeah.
I
Well,
will be
like even IRL, people are too comfortable just saying dumbass, stupid shit. And it's like, you bugger, if it wasn't for the millions of freaking safety nets, your nose would be inverted right about now.
I will
Yeah.
be talking about that later on tonight, just to let you know, because there's a lot of videos I've been watching this past week that I'm like, you know what? Mike Tyson was right about Mike Tyson, Andrew Tate, and I think a couple other fighters. They're completely correct about people being too comfortable behind the screen. So I'm definitely will be speaking on that later. Because I agree. People are just, sometimes they don't even realize that they're not in front of the screen. Right? They'll say some crazy shit in your face. And then when you teach them a lesson, right? You know, knock them on the noggin, right? Like, is anybody there with the full swing? He's like, he's in shock and all. Oh, how dare you hit me? Oh my God. Like what? Like you honestly thought you were on Twitter?
Yeah, it's like that Master Chief meme. Wait, that's illegal. It's like, you think I give a fuck? I determined the juice was worth the squeeze the minute that you got hit. Yeah.
Right. And, you know, Fed and Fraud, even though I don't like them, they made a good point when it comes to, and Abba and Preach, they also made a good point of, man, that we always have an underlying, you know, agreement or understanding that there is always that risk of, if the line is crossed too far, violence is going to happen. And it's not just that, oh, you know, let's slap each other in the face. Ooh. No, it's talking about possible life and death violence, because that's how quickly things can escalate, and that's how strong men are. We don't know if it's going to end in death.
Yeah, one good punch from a man's all it takes.
Exactly. We don't know how, and that's why men are way more calculating when it comes to, is it worth getting into a fight or not, unlike women, right? Because women, they experience way less violence to the men, way less violence. Not that, oh, how dare you touch me in that area, I'm going to the cops. No, I'm talking about her getting yeeted across the street type violence. She never had to experience that, or rarely. So they could get way too comfortable going up to a grown-ass man, you know, like putting her finger in his face or whatever, and then expect nothing to happen, right? Because the Sims, the White Knights, the state, whatever it is, has her back. But they tend to fail to realize, like, who's going to get to you quicker, the police or me? Let's just think on that. But they don't think that far, right? They just believe that they're protected. But all it takes is a second. 1 second. They're out on the floor, just gone. Where's my white knights? That's the reality of life. Life is unfair. Things won't go your way. You thought that you're Queen Cleopatra, nobody can touch you. Bam, you got karate chopped in the shoulder. Now your shoulder's gone. A lot of people don't know what violence is. A lot of people do not know what death is. And that's why I agree. I think Gray said it, that people are getting way too comfortable these days running their mouths. Because especially when things collapse, I guarantee you a lot of men and women will put their heads down and not in agreement with the big dog around.
As soon as 911 stops working, that's all it's going to take. As soon as 911 stops working, there's going to be a lot of people that learn just how much they have pissed off the people around them.
I completely agree. So it's like, okay, where's your cops now? Or where's your Sims to White Knights now? It's just being you. Want to keep running your mouth? Dead silence. They'll be quiet like a mouse. you know, and that's one of the, and once that's why I say well played to the powers to be. They give a lot of leeway, a lot of enabling behavior to modern women or male feminists, right? Those weak soy boys. They give a lot of leeway to them to
My
say
thing
whatever
is
they want.
the weaker you are, the more government protection that you get because you are the justification for the government's violence.
Right. But I'm definitely going to get into detail about this later on. If you're not busy, Gray, in like 4 hours, 5 hours. It won't be long. It'll be like an hour. It'll be like
I
an
don't know.
epic.
I got to work in the morning, man.
Oh, it's all good. I'll plan on doing this anyway. But if you plan on stopping by, or if you want to take a listen, I'll be doing my thing. Pete, I know you're gonna be busy as well. So
Yeah, I got work related shit coming up. So yeah.
yeah, this week is gonna be a busy week for all of us. That I know. Oh my god. But overall, do you guys have anything else to say about this topic? Was this a good stream or?
I just expand one more thing on the order and chaos. That it's
What's up?
that the primary reason that women are the agents of chaos beyond their base nature is because they are weak. And in an ordered system, it is very difficult for a woman to get ahead. As Peter Baelish puts it in A Song of Ice and Fire, chaos is a ladder. If you're in a stable system, then there's only certain ways you can advance. In a chaotic system, there's many more opportunities.
You're not wrong. That you're completely correct. Honestly, how do you say? A good example is Bad Man with the Mustache. He did the Blitzkrieg. When the prohibition happened, when they banned alcohol in the U.S., a lot of mobsters, especially Al Capone, thrived. When it comes to a societal collapse, only the pretty much the baddest and strongest dudes come out on top and claim lands and resources and stuff. And when it comes to women, that's perfect opportunity to how do you say, climb the ladder much quicker to a higher position, right? Choose the biggest and baddest man, or cause chaos in the workplace. Let's keep it small. Cause chaos in the workplace to the point where they get somebody they hate fired, or they make everybody else look bad and she herself looks good so she can get promoted ahead of her peers. Those
Yeah, when
types.
when they can't win on merit, they'll sabotage.
Oh, I've seen that personally. They're grimy, bro. Like beyond petty. They're petty as fuck. I definitely seen that shit before. Like even I wouldn't go that far. What the fuck? Oh, they will literally like lie and start rumors and gossiping and what's it called? Reputation destruction, pretty much. I think that's what Jordan Peterson said. Where worst comes to worst, they will literally sabotage your whole livelihood by destroying your reputation. Because reputation is very, very important no matter where you are. That's why false allegations are so powerful in first world countries, or at least in the United States. They can literally point and say, "Oh, he did this to me," or "Oh, I saw him do some heinous things to a underage person." It's over for you. Well, and there's nothing you can do. What do you have to say about that, Pete?
Well, yeah, if we're just wrapping up order and chaos for the chat. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that when we minimize danger with all the first world luxuries that we have, chaos is allowed to thrive, and it's often reflected in the form of dysgenic practices, right? We've kind of outlined this one talking about the genes, environment, epigenetic discussion. And when things do get dangerous, it is chaotic, but it necessitates order in order to prevent the failure of the species. So, I mean, ideally, we kind of want a middle ground where the threat of danger is always known and apparent, so that incentivizes order, because we don't want to get too comfortable. But at the same time, we don't want things to get so dangerous that, you know, we're constantly on our toes looking over our shoulders. It's hard to find that happy balance, though. But I think definitely right now we're in a situation where we are too comfortable, and as a result, it's just a free for all where, you know, everybody's doing what they want. Screw the consequences. Screw who gets hurt, who gets crushed along the way. And I don't think anybody's winning right now. But hey, once that ball bounces, we'll see what happens after that.
Okay, Gray, you any summary?
No, that was basically my final point there, that it's primarily the weak that seek chaos, because it's like if you're strong, then you can find a way to navigate an ordered system. But it's when you're weak that you seek to instead break the system.
Okay, I definitely agree with what both you guys just said. I don't really need to wrap it up per se, because we pretty much said everything we needed to say. I'm gonna address this last comment. Rosemary said, "Women don't need men." My only comment is, look around you. Look what you have in society. Look how comfortable and luscious and luxurious it is. You really think it's because it's just a bunch of women? You will always need men, Rosemary. You're just too prideful to admit it. Thank you everybody that joined this glorious live stream today. Definitely informative. I learned a few things that I never really thought about today. Thanks to Gray and Pete. And thanks to everybody that donated as well. I'll definitely be doing another stream later on tonight. Just gonna be a quick stream, pretty much like a rant or whatever. But I'm glad you guys came and gave us maximum participation, even though you guys were having a conversation on your own. I've been paying attention to the chat. This is Sir Yeetus. Hopefully you guys had a shit ton of gems dropped on you today. And we are out of here. Peace.
Night, everybody.
Later.